Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Brooke Faw, she is Vice President, Client Experiences at Bespoke Sports and Entertainment. We are so happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Our pleasure. So I want to kick it to you. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh gosh. So I'm Brooke. I am the Vice President of Client Experiences at Bespoke. It's just a really fancy way of saying that I get to throw really great parties and events all the time. So we created Bespoke, it'll be 8 years ago this year, and essentially kind of broke away from the big traditional mold that a lot of agencies fit in. And so we're literally our name, and that we customize every single thing that we do for the clients. And we created the kind of client experiences division out of all of our clients. Were doing a lot of hosting, and believe it or not, there are some CEOs that they've been to the Masters like 10 times. So how do you create an experience that gets them to say yes? Because if you ask them to go, even though some of us would be dying and would absolutely say yes, they've been 10 times. So what makes them say yes? And so really our whole job is just to create and cultivate these amazing experiences that whether you're a sports fan or a entertainment fan or not, you still want to come because you know that the entire weekend is just going to be phenomenal. And quite frankly, you could care less what event you're coming to.
I cannot wait to dig in and hear more about some of those experiences and get all the tips from you. But I want to start a little bit more on you personally. How did you get to where you are today? What's the short story of Ball State College to your position today?
There's no short story. The shortest version. So I am from Indiana. I'm a proud Hoosier. Grew up in a town. I graduated with 72 people, so tiny to say the least. We don't even have an actual stoplight. We just have like that flashing four-way, and really didn't know what opportunities were out there. I went to Ball State, which is the proud home of David Letterman. And at first I wanted to be an ESPN sportscaster. I love sports, love to talk, put them together. I wanted to be the next Aaron Andrews. At the time, I was seeing someone, and he had a very strong opinion about like wanting, me to be home more often and not be traveling so much. And so the sportscaster life just really wasn't going to be one that I thought I could do. Plus, just being in Indiana, it was just such a pipe dream. New York, LA, Indiana's not exactly the hub of all of that. And so I became a teacher. I was a kindergarten teacher and a high school basketball coach, which if you know anything about Indiana, basketball is life there. And I coached at one of the largest high school gymnasiums in the world. So always fun fact to say. And then life just kind of happened. I came to Charlotte on what was supposed to be a week-long vacation that I had because I had the summers off because I was a teacher. Met a lady who was a principal in Mooresville, North Carolina, and what they were trying to do, we were already doing in Indiana, and so I basically kind of convinced her, honestly, at a bar, like sitting there having dinner with her, that she should hire me. And so I, on a whim, moved to Charlotte. I taught for a year in Mooresville, North Carolina. Mooresville is NASCAR. It's literally like on the giant water tower. It says Race City, USA. It's where everyone from NASCAR works, lives, that kind of thing. I knew nothing about NASCAR, like absolutely nothing, but all of my parents somehow, some way had a job in it. So I just started asking questions. And then funny enough, I had a parent who was a pit crew member for a driver who was getting ready to throw a charity event. And he came in one day and he was like, hey, our driver's kind of like asking around the garage for volunteers. We really shouldn't be the ones he's asking. Like, you seem fun. You seem to know how to throw a good party. You seem organized. Like, how about I introduce you guys? So I said, okay, great. And so I did that event for him. He then introduced me to another driver, did another event for him, and kind of just went this charity route. And then funny enough, the driver that I did the first event for, he had a PSA with a local healthcare system in Charlotte, and they needed someone to run sports partnerships. And he just called me one day and he was like, I think you should do this. And I was like, I'm a kindergarten teacher, right? Like I know nothing about any of this. And he was like, no, this is what you should do. Um, so he put my name in. Thankfully they said yes. And so then I started my first like real job in sports, managing sports partnerships for a healthcare system called Novant Health. They had just done a deal with the come back again Charlotte Hornets. So the Hornets were in Charlotte, then they left for a little while, then they came back. So they were revamping their deal with the Bobcats because they were getting ready to turn back into the Hornets. Part of that deal actually included a PSA with Michael Jordan, which again, Indiana girl, basketball girl, like, you want me to sit in a room with Michael Jordan and not lose it? Like what? But luckily I made it through that meeting and did, a really great job. I loved my position at Novant. We grew it so much so that I was able to hire an agency to kind of help me with all of the activations and things we were doing. The agency that I hired, I had known the principal of that agency for some time when I was trying to like kind of figure out my life. I had gone to a networking event with him, and when you just meet really good people and you just know that they're just solid folks and you don't know how or what you're going to end up doing with them, but you just know somehow they're going to be in your lives. And so this is going to sound really corny, and probably half the people listening to this don't even know who this girl is anymore, but there was a show, Mary Tyler Moore show, that was, about a woman trying to make it in a man's world, and the like theme of the show, or like the theme song always ended with, "You're gonna make it after all," and then she like throws her hat up in the air. So I post this picture of Mary Tyler Moore throwing her hat up in the air, and just the day that I met this guy, and was just like, today was this like super inspirational day, whatever stupid things you post on Facebook like 15 years ago. And so I end up hiring his agency to be my agency at Novant Health. And then he leaves. And I called him and I said, hey, where do you think you're going? You can't leave. I hired this agency because of you. And he was like, come have a beer with me. And so I went and had a beer, and he essentially started talking about the vision of what is now Bespoke Sports and Entertainment, and just how there was this niche in the agency world that wasn't being filled, and how he could just see, it's almost like that Jerry Maguire moment of like, less clients, more quality time, all like the manifesto late at night. And I had subsequently, in the time I got married, and we had just had our son. Griffin was like 1 at the time. So anyway, at the end of the beer, he basically asked me to quit my job and come over and help him start Bespoke. And I told him that he had lost his mind, and that I was going to stick at my perfectly comfy corporate job that provided me great healthcare and very flexible hours with my baby, and to have a nice day. And so I went home that night, and the next morning was like laying there, just like looking at, it was Time Hop at the time, before Facebook had memories. And 2 years ago today, there's that picture of Mary Tyler. And I start crying even now, just talking about it. So you can imagine, I bawled like a baby. I called him. He was very confused. He was trying to figure out if Mary Tyler Moore died, like why I was crying, why I was talking about Mary Tyler Moore. And then we eventually got around to, I believe in this, and this is a sign, let's do it. And that was 8 years ago, and here we are today.
Oh my gosh, Brooke, I love this story so much. And you guys, I hope you were listening, like kindergarten teacher to VP in sports and entertainment, trusting your gut, following your vision, meeting the right people. And, we always talk about like putting ourselves in a position to win and to meet the right people. And maybe there's a little bit too much wrapped around that, like being in the right place at the right time. For you was teaching in North Carolina, and having parents who are working in a sport that you weren't even sure that you had interest in working in, but it afforded you this opportunity. And I think, staying true to yourself, and they could see the potential in you and what you could what you could do. And it's such a great story that, you don't have to be like so tied into where you should be showing up. Maybe you're in the right place, and maybe you should just trust leaning in on who you are and what you're capable of, and opportunities can come your way.
Amen. Couldn't have said it any better.
Oh, I love that. Well, you did say it better. It's your story. So now you're in this role, 8 years, you've been with the company, grown with the company, but you had that sort of launch pad from Novant Health.
Mhm.
What did you learn about sponsorship client services and client services in general that make you so good at your job today?
Yeah, so I'm always super grateful when I get to speak to like college classes and things, and I say, okay, you want to work in sports? What does that mean? And so I put it into kind of buckets. There's brand jobs, there's league and team jobs, and then there's agency jobs. And those are the three like pretty big buckets that just about every job falls into. There's pros and cons to everything. So on the brand side, I really loved having the checkbook, and like it never hurts when you're the one being wooed. And but so that was definitely the pro. The con was I only got to work in whatever my work sponsored. So at Novant Health, we were a huge partner of the Hornets. And then we had some minor league partnerships and things too. But really, the majority of our dollars went to this NBA partnership. And again, I'm a basketball girl, so while I love that, like I wanted to get some NFL experience and some college football experience and NASCAR experience and all of these things. And so the brand side doesn't really afford you the ability to do that. And then the brand side is also just very corporate. I mean, that's basically the word for it. You dress up every day, you sit in a cubicle, I had great colleagues and coworkers, but like at the end of the day, I felt like I was just there was like a giant cog and I was just a very small part of the wheel. And if you removed me, that big old cog just kept spinning, especially in the healthcare system. I mean, they're literally like curing cancer. My beautiful ideas about, sports marketing, not really a high priority in like the grand scheme of things. And so instead of kind of beating my head against the wall, I was like, where does my personality fit? The team and league side, I've never personally been on, but I have a lot of friends who have been, so I feel like I can speak to it. There's something to say about being a part of a team. Like people wear it as a badge of honor. Like I work for the Indianapolis Colts or the New England Patriots or, whatever. Like it's very, there's like this team building aspect to that. But again, the same issue was arising with me. Like if I went and worked down the street with Panthers, all I would be doing is football games. And I wanted to do more than that. So the agency world was a world that I had never really tried, but I just saw the opportunity. And so I'm super grateful for my time at Novant because it taught me all the like nuts and bolts. Like it taught me how to read contracts. It taught me how to evaluate assets. It taught me what some brands see as important may not be what other brands see as important. So it taught me kind of how to make a well-rounded group of assets and really look at like consumer data and just get smarter. I always say Big Brother is watching. It's kind of scary, like how much we can know about a person just if we pay attention. And so the my brand work taught me all of that, which then I parlayed over to my agency work. And now I just do it for multiple brands and multiple sports. And I get all of that variety that I was craving.
Yeah, I love that cross. It's not outside of the industry, but it's you put it very well with the 3 different verticals you can work inside of sports and the pros and cons to each, and what you value and what you want out of it. And you found that working the agency side was the best fit, but your foundation on brand side has really helped you. I can't imagine the understanding you have for your clients having been the client, right?
And funny enough, Novant is now one of our clients. And so it's helpful, to have all of that.
I'm sure. And I'm sure it's no mistake that they now are one of your clients as well.
They didn't let me get far.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So 9 years now with Bespoke, and you have, been there for that time, grown from day one, from that drink at a bar to start. And Bespoke has recently been nominated for an SBJ for Best Sports Agency in Creative and Innovation. So huge congrats on that. And what do you think are the key factors that led to, one, that nomination, but then on the personal side, what has led to you sticking with it for this last 9 years?
Oh my gosh, I'll cry again. Um, so one, I'm just so proud. And I actually was just in a meeting with our entire team, and we have a lot of young people. And I sat there and I said, I don't think you guys realize how big of a deal this is. They kind of came in when the agency was growing and flourishing, and they weren't there, the first day when we didn't have a trash can, and like somebody wanted to see if the printer worked, and I was like, okay, where's the paper to put it in? And they're like, this thing doesn't come with paper, like, no, it doesn't. So to grow something from literally the ground up, other than the birth of my son, I've never had a more proud moment. It literally is a birth, just of a company. And the two men that I grew the start of the company with, like, they're absolute family. And what we've been able to do is just phenomenal. But I honestly think, and this sounds cliche, but it's our people. We have the best folks. We end up spending more time with each other than we do with our own families. And so we have become this family. And then our clients are an extension of that. Like, I have been in a client's wedding. I have thrown clients' baby showers. Like, they are a family too. And so when you look at who's in the category, who else got a nomination, it's the behemoths, right? Like, it's Wasserman and GMR and Octagon and folks that are just, we can't even touch like the size that they are compared to what we are. But I think that that's what makes us special, is we're not a behemoth. When you call, you probably know the person that answers the phone, and or if you don't, they can get you right to the person that answers the phone. And when we sit in meetings, our CEO and president are sitting there with us, and that's where we have just done things differently, and our clients have really, reacted to that. I am so much of a different person than I was 9 years ago. And it's because of that approach. Like, Mike and Greg, who we helped start the company, like, they brought me in on day one, and I was in my 20s and probably did not deserve to be sitting there having these conversations, but quite frankly, no one else was going to be there. So they needed the bodies. But then, they saw that I had a passion for this, and saw I had a passion for that, and believed in me when I honestly didn't believe in myself, or didn't even know what to believe. And I look back now at all of these crazy things that I've done. And I sit on panels, and I am interviewed on podcasts, and I'm just a farm girl from Indiana, but because of the kind of intimate nature of the way we run our business, it's just helped catapult me personally. And then it's also just made us so sticky in the industry. And I think, industry professionals are appreciating the way that we're going about it, which is why we were nominated for the award.
Oh gosh, congratulations again. And hearing how you guys you're not trying to be something that you're not, you're so well defined in what you do and the way that you serve your clients. And that's meaningful. And that's why you're in the position you're in today. And gosh, I just love that. And how lucky are those that get the chance to work with you? And if they don't know it now, they'll know it fairly soon. What a great way this was to start their career. And we just closed out Women's History Month, and there was a really cool activation at the Atlanta Motor Speedway to celebrate. Can you tell us about that celebration and what they did?
Oh my gosh. So this is another, again, when you love working for an agency that can be nimble and move things quickly. So about 10 days before the start of March, we were just kind of sitting around randomly talking, and I was like, I wonder what NASCAR's doing for Women's History Month. And so I called them, and they had some internal things for the employees and stuff, but as far as like an outward, like we're going to do this or this is our platform or whatnot, they really didn't have one. And we have a great client in Advent Health, which is a healthcare system out of Florida. And they were really looking on how to get sticky in women's sports. They're very involved in sports, but a lot of their sports partnerships are predominantly male, the Bucks and the Lightning and the Magic and those kinds of folks. And so they're like, how can we break into women's sports? And there's only one full-time female driver in NASCAR right now, in all three series, the Truck, Xfinity, and Cup series. And her name is Haley Deegan. And she's the daughter of Brian Deegan. So a lot of people know her from like the Metal Militia days of Brian and whatnot. But she is her own force, and she is a rock star. And so I called her and I said, hey, I have this crazy idea. Let's do a women's history paint scheme on your truck, and let's run it in Atlanta, which is happening during the Women's History Month. And she was like, okay. So we were batting around, like, do we put the first woman to ever drive in NASCAR? Do we put the first woman to ever win a race? And it's so hard to pick one, right? Or even to pick a handful. And I just kind of had this epiphany, and I was like, listen, every single woman that works in this sport, from the person that is the PR person to the official to the person that opens the garages in the morning to everyone, credentials, all of the things are the reason that this sport is successful, and we need us all. And so I wonder how many women there are that work in NASCAR. And NASCAR has this credential called a hard card, that if you work in 4 or more races throughout the year, you need a hard card in order to work. And so I called them and I said, hey, can you run a report to see how many hard card holders there are? And there were over 1,300 names. And I was like, this is our story. This is it. And so in very small print, we put all 1,300 women, over 1,300 women, on Haley's car or on Haley's truck on the deck lid. And then ran kind of a Women in NASCAR paint scheme, which is the nonprofit group that NASCAR started for their employees. And we kind of made like a last second announcement. Hey, anyone that's available, come take a picture on the grid. We'll hand you a t-shirt, whatever. And we had like 50 women that just came out and, stopped their day job, came out, took the picture. And what I think was the coolest thing is I actually saw one of the drivers come over to the car, and he took a picture, and I said, what are you taking a picture of? And he said, my wife and my mom are on this paint scheme because they also were in the industry. And he was like, I want to send it to them. And so even the ones that weren't there, their significant others or their daughters or their bosses were coming over and taking the picture and sending it to them. And we are actually making like a little mini version that we're going to send to a lot of the women, because I just think it's such a statement. NASCAR specifically, but sports in general, gets kind of the rap unfairly of being a man's world. And I'm like, there's literally 1,300 of us. Like, even 5-10 years ago, that list would have been a lot smaller. It certainly was when I first started in the garage. So I was just really proud to be able to pull that paint scheme together, to be able to sponsor Haley, who I wanted for her to feel love and to have that support. And then I was super grateful. We turned that idea around in 10 days. And for the league and the team and the track and the driver, and then all of the entities to all approve in less than 2 weeks, it was a miracle. And so I'm just super grateful for everyone just getting on board and realizing how important it was and getting it done.
Oh, how cool. I just experienced like a whole range of emotions listening to you tell that story, and what an impact. And I think that, how cool for all the women's names. But what got me, I think, was the story about the man acknowledging the women. and taking those pictures and sharing those, and just really that recognition, I think, means so much of the hard work that makes it all happen. How much has the celebration and acknowledgement of women's work changed in your eyes over your career?
It's so I actually was the inaugural class of Event Marketer has an award called Market Like a Mother that they just started a couple years ago. And so I was the first class that got that award. And when they told me that I had won it, like I just had this epiphany of like, this wasn't, I've been a mom for, I mean, my son's 10 now, so like I've been a mom a while. But this just wasn't even a thing a decade ago. One, quite frankly, there probably wasn't enough of us. And then two, we were all hiding, for lack of better words, or just trying to blend in, I think is probably the better way to say that is, we didn't want to stand out. We didn't want to be the woman, be the different thing in the room. We just wanted to be considered one of the guys. And I've kind of reframed that in my own head, and then give the advice to women that are kind of coming in is like, different is better. Different gives alternate perspective. It gives variety. Like, imagine if this world was just full of the same. Like, it just wouldn't, it wouldn't be an interesting world. And so instead of blending in, I now support people standing out because that's what makes you memorable. And hopefully, you're able to, put your like little stamp on this world because you did do something different.
That's such a great point to bring up. I think early in my career, for most of my life, probably, I was trying to blend in. I had two brothers growing up, and I was a tomboy, and I was always like one of the guys. I can play sports too. I can do that too. And it wasn't in a way that I could do it like my way. It was, I could do it just as good as you, or I could do it like you. And so I love how you're now really celebrating and coaching and teaching that variety is better, different is better. And, it really meshes with the name of your agency.
Yeah. It's funny. I worked in sports at first. Like, I always had my hair pulled back. I wore black, nothing,
Me
and now
too.
you see like I've got print, got my hair down. Like, it's just, I've totally changed how I even like look and then just present. And I'm just, this way is so much better. I'm glad I don't have to wear black all the time anymore.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't it feel good to be yourself and be able to succeed as your authentic self, as the person that you are and were meant to be?
So true.
So what do you think is the greatest achievement in your work?
Oh man. So I'll go two paths on this one. One is professionally, and then one is personally. Because I think that we're crazy if we think that they don't blend together. With as much as we work, like your personal life is your work life, and your work life is your personal life. So from a work standpoint, so we actually got nominated for the SBJ back in 2020, which we all know what 2020 was. And believe it or not, we won. So we were 6 years old at the time. We were the youngest agency to win the award. And you want to talk about crying? Like, I cried so hard that day because they tweaked the award that year because of course it couldn't be judged on like the big activations you've done, and that because it's 2020. And so it really was on how did you pivot and how did you get creative with this crazy world. And that's what Bespoke was like meant to do, right? Is how do we get creative? How do we get custom? How do we, change on a dime? And can we move quickly and all of those things? And so to be acknowledged for that in such a hard time that like our country was going through. And I'll never forget, we were all in my boss's backyard, like sitting at separate pods, like because it was still like you could be outside together but you weren't supposed to be close, and all of the things. We weren't allowed to go to the award ceremony. We weren't allowed to be in the ballroom. But I'm so grateful that we had that opportunity because we were all together. And, the COVID rules went out the window a little bit because I hugged everyone. But that is just a moment in my life that I will never forget. And then, personally, I remember calling my son that night and being like, buddy, we won. And it's so funny. He was like, well, of course you did. Like, it just didn't even register to him that we wouldn't win because in his eyes, like we're the best and his mom is the best. And when we, go, I take him everywhere. He's like my little companion. And so when we go places, someone will start talking about sports and he'll like hit me and be like, Mom, tell them who you are. And I'm like, oh God, but just there's children are ridiculously honest and they have no filter. And to see what I do through his eyes and to see how proud he is of that, you could give me every award and then some, and it still wouldn't mean more than just his like little mini award that he gives me of the satisfaction of just being proud of his mom.
Oh gosh, Brooke, you are a great storyteller and you're really good at bringing in emotion because I'm just feeling every one of these stories that you're sharing today. And I'm so happy the next question is asking you to tell a story again. What's the coolest experience that you've had?
Oh man, God, there's so many of them. I think the best one I have was right when we first started the agency. FS1 was coming out. It wasn't a network and it was launching as a network. And the very first college football game on FS1 was going to be Michigan versus Utah. And it was the homecoming of Jim Harbaugh. It was his first game as the Michigan coach. And so the prodigal son returns, and we had some relationships over on the Fox side and they said, hey, we want to take a bus, tour it around the country, end in Utah, and we want it to like look like Harbaugh. And I'm like, what do you mean you want it to look like Harbaugh? And like the Harbaugh has a very infamous uniform of like the blue sweater with the M block, the leather belt, the khakis, and the whistle and the play card tucked in. And so it was like actual khaki pants, like real fabric that went on this bus, real leather, real sweatshirt material. So this giant bus rolls out and they called it the Har bus. And literally it looked like Jim Harbaugh rolling down the road. And then we filled it with 5 college kids that looked like Harbaugh. And they were called the Har Bros. And so the Har Bros got on the Har bus and we toured the country. And every morning we went to a Fox affiliate to kind of talk on the morning show. Every afternoon we did some sort of celebrity appearance. And then every night we went to a baseball game. And because that's what was on Fox. And then they were, promoting the upcoming launch of FS1. And we got a ton of pickup. Like, as you can imagine, there was a lot of people talking about it, to the point where when we got close to Utah, we got word that the Utah AD at the time was like, that bus is not allowed on campus. You are not allowed on campus. You are not allowed to come to the game. Like, essentially, we're banned from the state of Utah. And so we said, okay, fine, no problem. So we did. I mean, we had hotel rooms. And so we went. And this was year 1 of Bespoke. So again, like, and really like 2 or 3 years removed from being a kindergarten teacher. And some of my naivety actually worked well for me. And then I was like, well, I mean, are they really going to stop us? And so I had an FS1 polo on and I had a clipboard and I had like a little earpiece and I had the boys and I was like, come on, let's just walk up there and try. And so we went in the talent gate. Well, the security was like, oh yeah, I've seen you guys all over TV. And I was like, yeah, we're supposed to be on the field with the Fox talent. They're going to interview the boys. And they're like, okay, didn't check a pass, didn't check a thing. We had nothing, literally nothing. And we walk all the way down, we get on the field. And I think it was Matt Leinart came up and like started talking to the boys. So everyone was like, oh yeah, they're supposed to be here. Well, then Jim Harbaugh's wife comes out of the tunnel, sees the Harbros, and it's like, oh my God, I've been seeing you guys everywhere. Can I take my picture with you? So I'm like taking a picture of Sarah Harbaugh with all these people. And coach walks out. And so he comes over, he shakes every one of the kids' hands. I thought they were going to pass out. Like they absolutely were. And I look up on the big screen, which is the live feed of what's going on TV, on the broadcast. And they were filming Utah warming up. Then they move it to Harbaugh meeting the Harbros. And out of the corner of my eye, I see the AD, and he is completely across the field. And instead of like walking around, nope, he is direct line straight through the field. Out, get out. I was like, yes, sir. And I remember my boss at the time like texting me, and he's like, hey, don't worry about it. Like Utah was just going to be the icing on the cake. Like, no worries. We got so much brand exposure. This is going to be great. And then he sees us live on TV, and I just like texted back. I'm like, enjoy your cake. So that was a fun one. But like the pants survived a monsoon in Chicago when we were driving through, and I know more about epoxy now than I ever cared to know about it, like what'll make pants stay on a bus while you're driving across the country. So that was one for the memory books, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, talk about creativity and pulling it all together. Also the lesson here is dress the part.
Yes. Always have a backup earpiece, even if it's not attached to anything. I've gotten so many places just because I have an earpiece in my ear.
Stash that in your purse for sure. And then I would love to see the Harboro's resumes today. It's like the interesting fact. I was a Harboro
So
back in the day.
is one of them is now the VP of our consulting services.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he interned with us, and then he was like, I really like what you guys do. And 7 years later, he's like, all right, I'm now running the consulting services for Bespoke.
Well, you guys have the best origin stories for your staff. I love it. Oh, that is so cool. Okay, I want to talk about WISE for a minute.
Oh yeah.
And how much has your involvement in WISE helped you feel supported in your career?
So kind of a similar story to the paint scheme. When I moved to Charlotte, I knew that there were women who worked in sports, but trying to find groups of us was hard, because if you go to just a team or a brand, there's like one or two. And so we were like, how do we collectively get everyone together? And so in 2019, we kind of put an all call out. Like, we think we want to start a Charlotte chapter of WISE. Is anyone interested? Over 200 people came to that first call. And so we very quickly were like, okay, this is a thing. And so we created a board that I am very grateful to be a part of. And we launched, and we do kind of monthly networking events. Some of them have like specific themes or goals. Some of them are more just like, hey, let's get together. But then 2020 hit, and we weren't able to get together. So now coming out of that, like, I am just so grateful. There's a lot of people that can sympathize, but there's not a lot of people that can empathize, meaning that they actually know what you're going through. And then being in my mid 30s, like, I was trying to find someone older than me that I could say like, hey, how did you get through this? And I was striking out. And so then this group kind of came along and helped me find, I call them the OGs, but like the ones that, went right before me. And they're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're dealing with, and here's what I did, and blah, blah, blah. And then we have created this even stronger network for the girls behind us to now, this is like, I always said when I first came into the NASCAR garage, no one looked like me. And I kept trying to find a woman who, she just needed to have a couple characteristics. One, she needed to be a sheep, which knocked out like half the garage, or more than half actually. And two, she needed to be a wife. It's hard when you have to leave, someone at home to travel as much as we do. Three, she needed to be a mom. As hard as it is to leave your spouse, it's even harder to leave your kid. And so needed to understand that. And then four, she needed to be, and I never quite got this wording right, or PC, but like nice, I felt like a lot of the women that came before me had such a hard-nosed way to go about it, and I don't blame them. Like, they didn't have any other options really, but it's almost like they had to be a you know what in order to like get people to hear them. And it's just not in my DNA. Some of my coworkers would argue, but like I always start with the friendly side and then go to the not so nice side if I need to. And so the some of the advice I was receiving of like, well, just be meaner, well, just don't smile, well, stop hugging people. That just wasn't going to work for me. And so what I found in Wise was this amazing breadth of people who were badasses, but they were badasses with smiles on their face, and that's who I needed. And so now we're a little over 200 members strong, and we just came back from New York where we did a national symposium, and that was super cool to get every Wise member from the nation around. And then they gave away these Women of the Year awards, and there were 4 Women of the Year that were awarded the award, and I was personally friends with 2 of them. And so again, to see where I've come in my career and come in my network, that I go from being a kindergarten teacher to being on a first name basis with women that are winning Women of the Year awards, like that says a lot.
Oh man, that is so cool. And I can personally attest as well to the value and the importance of Wise. And before I moved back to Reno in 2018, Wise Houston was starting their mentorship network. And I was like, of course, I would love to be a part of that. And I was like, can I be a mentee? And they were
Yeah.
like, no, you're a mentor. And I'm like, but I don't have that, the criteria that you listed like really resonated with me, because the women that I had to sort of look up to, not many of them had sort of fit the criteria that you outlined, which was things that I needed too. I was a wife, I was a mom of 2. I had, other priorities in my life besides just my job. And I wanted to know that I could do both of those things. And so it was kind of funny when I was like raising my hand to be mentored. And I'm lucky now, my network has come a long way in those years, but it has not come without a lot of work and putting yourself out there and asking, not to pick people's brains, but to like form genuine relationships with people and add value.
Yes, so true. Common misconception is that women need to drop out of sports once they get married or once they have a kid. And that the only ones that survive are those that just truly marry their job and have no other relationships outside of that. And it's just not true. Doesn't mean it's not hard, but you can do it all if you have the right network to support you. And so that's why I'm grateful for mine.
So speaking of that, tell us a little bit more about your life in North Carolina, your son, Griffin. You're a successful woman with a busy life, raising your son and being a part of your family. What are your keys to getting it all done and finding so much joy?
Oh my gosh. Well, you say I'm a great storyteller and I bring out emotion. So here we go. So a little over a year ago, I actually was diagnosed with stage 1 endometrial cancer. It came out of absolute nowhere. And the irony is the NASCAR driver who I was the first one that I met, and I helped plan the very first charity event. His longtime partner, who was also a part of that charity event, she had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was at Novant. And so I went through that diagnosis with her, and then subsequently raised money for female cancer research. And she was the one who we had lunch, and she kind of was like, hey, like, you should maybe, get some things looked at. Like, what you're saying to me isn't very normal, and it's got me a little bit worried. So you need to go to my doctor. And we're all very busy, and I wasn't going to make the time. And then she kind of forced me to. And I was super, super grateful that she did, because I caught it ridiculously early. And I'll never forget, I was, Duke's Mayonnaise is one of our clients, and it was the launch of the Duke's Mayo Classic. And so it was at an ECU playing a college football game at Bank of America Stadium on Thursday. Then there was like a client dinner party on Friday, and then it was Georgia Clemson on Saturday. And that's when Clemson's fallen off a little bit, but that was when Clemson was Clemson and Georgia was Georgia. And it was the year Georgia won the first year that Georgia won the national championship. And so that was like the game of games. And it was also one of the first kind of games back after COVID. And so everyone was just ready to go. And I was responsible for both of those games and all of the activations and the teams and everything that was going on. And basically squashed in the middle of those two games is when I received my diagnosis. And I think with getting a life-changing news like that, you can go kind of one of two ways. You can either go in a hole and cry, which don't get me wrong, I did for like a hot second. Or you can just see it as the blessing that it is and just come back even stronger. And so I decided to immediately have surgery, get it removed so that I didn't have to worry about it anymore. Had to go through some therapies and things, but thankfully I ended up being just fine. And with that, I just had this shift in mentality of what's truly important. And so, something as simple as just sitting in a meeting on a Monday at 2:00 and, the world is going to end because, somebody didn't get their like ribbon board graphic on time. Like, is it really? And I always used to use the adage of like, guys, we're not curing cancer here. Like, it's okay, calm down. And then when myself had to actually get cured by cancer, like I was like, okay, seriously though. So I think that shift in perspective, while I don't wish it upon anyone, just gave me this new life of what's truly important. What do I truly focus on? And then it also just made me hit a couple of pause buttons because I was just going. And I needed to slow down. I needed to take care of myself. I actually, at the exact same time of being diagnosed, was actually going through a divorce as well. And so trying to figure out how to become a single mom in this whole crazy world. And I relied on my son's dad to do a lot of the heavy lifting at home, and I didn't have that anymore. And so all of that to say, just the force to reprioritize, I'm actually super grateful for, because now coming out of it, I have an amazing relationship with my son, and we're just this little team, and he's in the office sometimes, and he travels on work trips with me sometimes, and he just gets it. And we've got that kind of figured out and handled. And then at work, I just come in with this like renewed perspective that I give some of these young ones that their whole lives revolve around this deal that they're doing or this activation that they're getting ready to do. And I just like give them that breath of like, step back, smell the roses, like, yes, work hard, but you only have one life. You might as well enjoy living it. So yeah, there's that whole story in addition to everything else.
Brooke, I'm responding every time you're done talking with like, oh my gosh, every time, every story. And I'm so grateful that you shared that because that's so personal. But the lessons that you've learned and are able to apply and then share, I think are really meaningful for a lot of people. And just thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Listen to your body. That's the biggest lesson I have is if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. And your body will make you listen one way or another. It's just, do you listen when it whispers or do you listen when it yells?
Yeah. And that is so true. And you can find a million things to do instead of go to the doctor. Your schedule is stacked, you're reviewing it on Monday and see there's no holes, there's no room for anything else. But truly like the most important thing is your health. And if you don't have your health, you can testify to that. You don't have anything. You can't work. You can't do the job. You can't show up for your life in the way that you want to if you're not well.
I think the craziest thing that I still am trying to wrap my head around is you made the point earlier of like, you are where you're supposed to be. Like, I met that couple, you know, gosh, 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago, being a kindergarten teacher and a parent coming in and saying, hey, he's looking for somebody to help him throw a party. Do you want to? And then fast forward to being there for them in a incredibly low spot of their lives, because it was my job that, by the way, they don't get. And then fast forward to, we were planning another charity event, and she was like, stop working on this, take the time, go. Like, honestly, had I not met her 13 years ago, I might not be sitting here today, because I wouldn't have listened to myself. And so it's just so crazy how small this world is.
It is. And pay attention, right?
Mhm.
You pay attention to those whispers from your body, pay attention to your intuition, pay attention to the people that are around you, because they're meant to be there. They're supposed to be there. And if you think about their purpose and how they can impact or affect or like guide you, it's comforting. But two, like it leads you to the next place that you're supposed to be.
So
You're so tuned into that. And I think all of the stories today really, really taught us a lot and reminded us a lot about intuition and trusting yourself, trusting your gut, and being yourself and showing up as that unique person is what's going to make your life great. And it's what is going to make your life yours instead of somebody else's.
I think the last thing I would add is, so many women ask me, like, how do you do it all? You know, especially with like being a single mom now, like how in the world do you do it all? And this idea of like work-life balance, I think is crap. Like, because at the end of the day, if things are truly balanced, then they're 50-50, right? And so I don't do anything at 50%. And so if I'm balanced, I'm only giving 50% to my job, and I'm only giving 50% to my personal life. And at the end of the day, they're both just falling apart if that's the case. And so I have, and trust me, I wish I would have found this out an easier way, but through everything that I've gone through, I've been forced to truly like tilt, and I'm either 100% working or I'm 100% mom. And that goes in like time frames of like, if I'm at soccer practice, like I am 100% mom mode. But then when we get in the car, I'll say to my son, I'm like, hey, while we're driving from here to dinner, I've got to take a call. I need 15 minutes and then I'm back to you. And he gets it. And so it can be as small as like 15-minute increments when you're 100% one thing, and then you turn around and 15 minutes later, you're 100% another thing. But I think if we kid ourselves in that we can balance everything, like you're just setting yourself up for failure. And so just understand that your focus needs to be on whatever you need to focus on. And if something really big's happening at work, then just explain to everyone, hey, this is what I need to focus on. But then also give the other side that same focus, so that everyone just feels like they get a part of you. And then you know, fall apart at the end of the day, crash and go to bed.
It is so well put. When you're trying to juggle, everything is truly in the air. I mean, that's the definition of juggling. What is your best piece of advice for women to apply today to level up tomorrow?
I'm going to go back to stop trying to blend in. Like, be you, be different. Like, be the blonde with the crazy colors that walks into a room in heels and everybody turns and looks. Like, there have been so many times where I've walked in with 5 or 6 male colleagues, and you know, we walk into that same meeting the next week and people remember my name and they don't remember anybody else's name. And like, it just goes to say, like, instead of trying to be someone else, just be yourself, and find a place that actually allows you to be yourself, because otherwise you're just not going to love it. And if you don't love it, like, what are we doing this for?
Where are you traveling to next?
Oh Lord. Well, personally, let's see. Yeah. It's about to be spring break. So Griffin and I are going down to Siesta Key, Florida, which is where my parents live. It's also the most beautiful place on earth. So If there's a wave of people that go there, I'll take the credit and tell them that they can give me a free timeshare. But like, it's what I call my happy place. It's where I truly disconnect and just enjoy the beauty that is that area. And then professionally, where do I go next? Probably a NASCAR race that's coming up, Final Four and Super Bowl and all of that just got done with. So really it's either a baseball game, or a NASCAR race that's probably coming up.
What is your pump up song?
Oh gosh, I have so many. All right, this is gonna sound ridiculously corny, but again, 90s girl, and I was raised in the country. The Man I Feel Like a Woman by Shania Twain, like that da 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 da, and then she goes, "Let's go, girls!" Like I'm ready to kick a door down.
Love it. Okay, and last question, what is your favorite quote?
So I actually use this one all the time, and the person who told me it was Susan O'Malley, who is a professor at the University of South Carolina now. But Susan was the first female president of really any professional sports team, but definitely first female president of an NBA team. And I heard her speak, and she said, to succeed in life, you need 3 bones. You need a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone. And a wishbone so that you can have big dreams, like the sky's the limit. A backbone so that you always know how to stand your ground. And then a funny bone, just to remember that, not to take yourself too seriously, because you're not going to make it out of this world alive. I've subsequently found out that that's a Reba McEntire quote, or at least Reba claims it. So I always give the quote to Susan O'Malley, but I think Reba had a thing to do with it too, which that's not a bad woman to have a quote from either.
I love that. Well, Brooke, this has been such a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing your voice and your story with us on the Leadership is Female podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.